Good morning. The U.S. history standard that we're working on today is standard number 5. It says, and I quote, "The student will explain specific events and key ideas that brought about the adoption and implementation of the United States Constitution. A, explain how the weaknesses in the Articles of Confederation and Daniel Shays' rebellion led to a call for a stronger central government," end quote. Now, the Treaty of Paris in 1763 was a treaty between, 1783, pardon me, was a treaty between England and 13 separate U.S. states. And this is how, very much how we saw ourselves. And we bound ourselves together with a loose form of government called the Articles of Confederation. This weak thread of government was enacted primarily for the former colonial defense in their battle with the mother country. This document was known as the Articles of Confederation. And now, when the war ended, the new states found that these articles were sorely lacking in several areas. The first area in which they were found lacking was in the legislative branch. There was a legislature, but you needed 3/4 or 9/13 to make a law. You had to have a perfect 13 of 13 votes to amend the Constitution. The legislature had no power to tax. It could ask for contributions from the states, and sometimes the states gave them, sometimes they didn't, which meant that the national government was continually out of money. And then there was a matter of representation amongst the legislative branch. For example, Georgia, with a population of barely 40,000, had 1 vote in the national legislature, just as did Pennsylvania with 600,000, and just as did Virginia with over 800,000. Many people felt that this was unfair. In the laws that were made, the federal government had no executive branch, so they could not enforce their laws. There was no president, no FBI. Hence, all the laws amounted to were really strong suggestions. Then there was no national court system. So that if a person, a Georgian, wanted to sue a South Carolinian, there was no neutral forum in which to try the case. You either had to come try it in Georgia or go to South Carolina. In either case, neither party would have been totally happy. Additionally, there was no forum in which to adjudicate border disputes, and there were many border disputes between the various new states. It got so bad that in New York, that they lined up an army on the border of Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania reciprocated with their own army, and they nearly went to war over a state boundary line. So we got weaknesses here. Our legislature had some problems, no executive, no national courts, And we're going to get back here to this tax situation. No power to tax. We found out a way to make money, the government, to get money, and that was through taxing imports, called tariffs. But if we taxed imports, if a ship came in to, say, Philadelphia, and the people tried to tax it there, to put a tariff on what was being brought in, the people on the ship might say, well, I'm going to take it to Baltimore. And they would take it to Baltimore and get a better deal. Or if they didn't get a good deal in Baltimore, they'd take it to Charleston and get a better deal. So the government had no way to enforce their only way of getting money, really. Their only way they could formally tax anybody on which was the tax on imports. So it could not, we're going to put this, the federal government could not regulate commerce. Had no power to regulate commerce. And commerce simply means the buying and selling, trading of goods. They could not regulate interstate commerce or international commerce, but they couldn't regulate interstate commerce either. Now, this was important because this caused Americans to lose jobs in competition with people from foreign countries. For example, if you lived in Georgia, and let's say you made wagon wheels, and you sold your wagon wheels for $8 a piece. Well, that's pretty good, because the people up in New York are wanting to pay. They're buying stuff from England, wagon wheels from England, and they're paying $11 a wagon wheel. So you say, hey, I can sell it to you for basically 25% cheaper. People in New York say, bring it on up. Well, as you're bringing it up, you put a whole bunch of wagon wheels on your wagon and you carry it up. First, you go through South Carolina. South Carolina says, hey, you're going to use my roads, you're going to have to pay a tax. $1 per wagon wheel that you're bringing. So South Carolina imposes a tax. You get to North Carolina, they do the same thing. Virginia, same thing. Maryland, same thing. Pennsylvania, same thing. New Jersey, same thing. And finally, you get it to your destination in New York. They're happy, and you say, okay, well, I'm going to sell you this wagon wheel for $8, but I got to charge you all the taxes that I paid too. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to charge you, this $8 wagon wheel is now $14. Where are they going to buy their wagons from? England at 11 or Georgia at 14? They're going to buy them from England. Hence, not being able to regulate interstate commerce placed this heavy burden on the individual states to make money in competition with foreign government. So the federal government desperately needed to regulate their interstate commerce. At the end of that war, that treaty of 1763, at the end of the treaty of 1783, at the end of that, well, a couple years later, 1785, John Adams was sent to England as our first ambassador. He went over there to talk to them about the fact that they still had, in violation of the Treaty of Paris of 1783, they still had redcoats in forts in western New York and along the Great Lakes, land that had been granted to us by the treaty. When Mr. Adams brought that up to a guy named William Pitt, foreign minister for England, Pitt responded with the Latin phrase, cui bono. In other words, who does it benefit? What he was saying was, you've got to pay your bills for us. You've got to do something for us before we do anything for you. The Articles of Confederation were weak. They didn't allow the federal government to become a strong, robust country amongst its peers in the countries of the world. It was making America poor. It was giving us contempt in the eyes of our fellow countries around the world, and it was causing contention amongst the states here at home. Something needed to be done to give us a stronger government.